Victor Wembanyama, a name that echoes with excitement and anticipation. He's unarguably the most hype prospect we've seen since LeBron James. But what if he was in LeBron's shoes? They were heading back in time and putting Wemby on the 2003 Cavaliers to start his NBA career. In his first season, Wemby put up impressive numbers, averaging 21 points and nearly 8 rebounds a game. Although he had a great rookie showcase, Dwayne Wade would take home the Rookie of the Year trophy, and Cleveland also only finished with 24 wins, finishing last in the Eastern Conference. With such a horrendous record, the Cavs had the odds for the second overall pick, but ultimately fell all the way to 5th and selected Luol Deng. In the 2005 NBA season, Victor would take a major leap, averaging 27 and 10 with nearly 3 blocks a game. He made All-NBA second team while led the Cavaliers to a 52 and 30 record and the first seed in the East. He had to face Vince Carter and Chris Bosh in the first round, and they did not hold back. Not only did they sweep the Cavaliers, but they went all the way to the NBA Finals, where they lost to 7 games to the Houston Rockets, led by the one and only Yao Ming. In 2006, he averaged 26 and 10, just 0.5% shy of winning the 50-40-90 club. As the second seed this year, they knocked out the Indiana Pacers in the first round and get revenge on the Raptors in the second. In the conference finals, they're up against Gilbert Arenas and the Washington Wizards. Unfortunately, Victor didn't have the help he needed though, and the Cavaliers lost the series in 5 games to the eventual champions. The following year will be similar, only this time he officially averaged 50-40-90 splits. As the second seed once again, they beat up against Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia 76ers. Despite having a better team on paper though, the Cavs were going home early once again. Every year was the same for Victor. He had amazing numbers, he just didn't know what more he could do to get the wins. In the 2007-2008 season, he made both All-NBA first team and All-Defensive second. He was desperate to prove that I was wrong. In the first round, he'd be up against a rookie Kevin Durant in Indiana. And although a young team, the Pacers were able to push the series to 7 games with KD averaging an outrageous 32 points per game in this series. Next up against the current MVP Tracy McGrady, who just averaged short of 40 points per game. The Cavs would have no trouble as they beat the Magic in just 4 games. In the conference finals, they'd be facing Dwayne Wade, Lamar Odom, and Caron Butler. Our team had some dogs, but Cleveland thought they had more bark, winning this series in 5 and going to Victor Wembanyama's first ever NBA Finals. He played against players such as Amar Stoudemire, Sean Marion, Stephon Marbury, and Joe Johnson. The Cavaliers would soon be up 32 and just needed one more win to win the series, but unfortunately the Suns fall back and the rest was history. Cleveland was proud of their first ever championship win. In 2009, the Cleveland Cavaliers would have their first ever 60-win season in franchise history. This will also give them the most wins in the league. Although Victor didn't win MVP, he was widely regarded as one of the best players in the league at this point. They would see a few familiar faces in the first round playing Toronto. However, the Cavaliers split the way through the Raptors in 5, including a 47-point, 23-rebound game from Wemby himself. But in round 2, they were up against KD once again. This time the Pacers would get the best of the Cavaliers, and they were going home in the second round once again. Victor kickstarted the 2010s by averaging the usual 26 and 10 stat line. In the process, he made both All-NBA and defensive first teams. He also led the Cavaliers towards 60 and 20 record. In the first round, he'd be up against the Washington Wizards, who still had a 32-year-old Gilbert Arenas. As expected, the Cavaliers would get the easy win against Washington and a gentleman's sweep. Next up, they had the Indiana Pacers. Although they had some history, this year would prove to be Victor's time to shine, as Cleveland kept heading toward the ultimate goal. In the conference finals, he was up against Tracy McGrady once again, who had just won his 3rd straight MVP. Cleveland was desperate for a finals appearance once again, and it showed. And in fact, they would end up sweeping the second seed at Magic and hit their second finals appearance in 3 years. And here lied the San Antonio Spurs, led by the one and only Tim Duncan. Cleveland was very well rested up to this point, since they only lost 1 game prior. Meanwhile, the Spurs had played in 2 Game 6s and a Game 7 in the second round against Portland. San Antonio came out swinging though they won the first game, but unluckily for them, the Cavs came out blazing for the next 4 games, and Cleveland had finally done it, breaking a 40-year curse and captured their first ever NBA championship. And of course, Victor Wembanyama was crowned Finals MVP for this year after running an amazing playoff run. Although LeBron will leave Cleveland for Miami in 2010, a 27-year-old Wemby had no plans of leaving the Cavaliers. After a spectacular season averaging 29 and 10, Victor won his first career MVP. Once again, the Cavs were on top of the East with a 63 and 19 record. They smashed the Washington Wizards in the first round of the playoffs in 5 games before dismantling the 76ers in the second round. In the conference finals, they were up against Tracy McGrady once again for the second straight year. But this year they had a new big name in free agency. Kevin Garnett had signed a 2-year, $37 million deal with the Magic. However, unfortunately for Orlando, this move wouldn't change much. The Cavaliers would still win the first 3 games of the series. Now, the Magic did manage to snag Game 4, but the series would be over as soon as Game 5 tipped off. In the finals, they were up against the Portland Trailblazers, who had just picked up Tony Parker, who was seeking revenge for his loss in the finals last year with the Spurs. The Trailblazers were still both games 1 and 2 in Cleveland, jumping out to a 2-0 start. The Cavs will win Game 3, but Portland came right back and won Game 4. Down 3-1, the Cavaliers were against the wall. Fans thought the series was over, but over the next week, the opinions of the world would change. Cleveland not only won Game 5, but they'd be forced a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. Was it possible? Would the Cleveland Cavaliers be the first team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals? Long story short, no. This would be Portland's first championship since 1978, right before Duke Dennis was born. Losing another NBA Finals drove Victor insane. During the 2012 season, he would be out for revenge, averaging an insane 32, 13, and 3 for the season. Along with being the first seed once again, this was enough for Victor to win another MVP and DPOY in the same season. The only thing left was to win a championship to capitalize this outlandish NBA season. In the first round, he's up against Charlotte Bobcats. They had an amazing guard duo in Derrick Rose and Rajon Rondo. This series should probably win 7 games, and in Game 7, the Bobcats had a 13-point lead heading to the fourth quarter, but Cleveland wasn't ready to go home just yet. They finished the fourth quarter outscoring the Bobcats 36-22, winning just by a single point to head to the second round. Here, the Cavaliers will play a 37-year-old Allen Iverson, who was still surprisingly averaging 21 and 10 a game. The Cleveland Cavaliers were the favorites, but the 5th-seeded 76ers were shocked NBA fans as they swept the Cleveland Cavaliers. With this season over, Victor Wembanyama was now officially an NBA free agent. In the offseason, Victor would get a plethora of offers, but ultimately he ended up signing with the New York Knicks for 3 years and $64 million. This was a team that already had a 54-28 record the previous season with Kevin Love leading the way. They also recently made a trade in which they sent Devin Harris to Houston in return for a 23-year-old DeMar DeRozan and a 2017 first-round pick. This season, Knicks would go 49-33 and finish as the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks muscled through Philly in 6 games and they won seed the Bobcats in just 5. But in the conference finals, Cleveland was standing in Victor's way. Despite finishing as the 7th seed and having a 43-39 record, they stood in the way of Victor's 4th finals appearance. The first 2 games New York would be a split, as would the 2 in Cleveland. With the series tied 2-2, New York got a major win in Game 5 at home. The Cavaliers fall back in Game 6 though and tied the series once again at 3 apiece. In Game 7, Victor have a breakdown, shooting just 3 for 17 from the field and 1 for 13 from 3. On the bright side though, he had 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and 5 blocks. DeMar and Kevin Love saved Victor though, and they'd be heading to the NBA Finals. Here they were up against Kobe Bryant. Fortunately enough, his second and third best teammates were Carlos Boozer and Brook Lopez. This series was the most boring NBA Finals of all time though, due to the Knicks winning every game by the double digits, including 2 27-point wins for the Cavs in games 1 and 4. And just like that, Victor was now a 2-time NBA champion at only age 29. In 2014, Victor's numbers would drop due to the Knicks having plenty of scoring options, but this didn't matter as his 24, 12, and 5 stat lines won him the MVP. The Knicks also won 60 games this year and were the heavy favorites to come out the East. In the first round, they were up against a young Gordon Hayward who just averaged 29 points in this breakout season. The Knicks would beat the 8th seeded Brooklyn Nets and Orlando once again, and per usual, Victor bite the Magic and Bobcats in 6 to head to the NBA Finals. Here, Vic would have a chance to get his revenge on the Phoenix Suns from all the way back in 2008. They still had Sean Murray and Amari Stoudemire, and had also picked up Al Horford. This series was very competitive as it stretched all the way out to 7 games, but sadly, history would repeat itself, and Victor would give the Suns yet another NBA championship. The following season, the Knicks would keep their core together and decide to run it back. They'd get 50 wins, and Victor be adding another DPOY to his resume. In the first round, they would be up against Toronto. Although Vince was long gone, they still had Chris Bosh and also drafted Kawhi Leonard back in 2011. The Raptors stole Game 1 in New York, but the Knicks blew the same in Toronto in Game 4. Back in the ground for Game 5, the Raptors would push the Knicks towards elimination. But luckily for the Knicks, they take Game 6 on the road and come back to MSG to finish the series. The second round wouldn't be as entertaining though, as Wemby continued to bully T-Mac and the Magic. In the semifinals, Detroit tried to stop the Knicks with a young duo of Jimmy Butler and Andre Drummond. And although they played well, the Knicks just had more experience and would be headed to yet another NBA Finals. Waiting for them was the New Orleans Pelicans, and this team was absolutely insane. They drafted not only Anthony Davis, Paul George, but Steph Curry also. The 2-seeded Pelicans won the first 2 games in their home floor, got to a 2-0 lead. New York didn't let it slide though and took games 3 and 4 in the Garden. Back in New Orleans, the Pelicans will win Game 5, and the trio had a masterclass. PG Steph aided would come by for 96 points and didn't show any signs of slowing down. New York desperately needed a win in Game 6 or else they were going home. And let's just say Steph sat in the bed. And with another finals loss, Victor was once again an NBA free agent. Victor was signed a 4-year deal with Charlotte for over $107 million. He'd be playing with Rajon Rondo and Tim Duncan, who had just signed a 1-year deal. However, the big three would take up all the cap space and the rest of the roster was filled with minimum contracts. This experiment went about as well as you could imagine, and Victor ended up winning another DPOY, and the Hornets finished 4th in the East. In the first round, they'd be playing the Hawks, who had a talented young team with names as James Harden, Dame Dollar, Giannis, and even picked up Gordon Hayward in free agency a few seasons ago. The Hornets big three played as hard as they could, but the lack of depth was evident, and Charlotte was going home in only 5 games. After this season, Tim Duncan would be hanging up his jersey, and Rondo would also be leaving in free agency to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. In the 2017 NBA season, Victor would win his 5th career DPOY and finish as the 6th seed in the East. Unfortunately, he'd be going home early again due to the 76ers. And funny enough, the Knicks will win another championship with Kevin Love leading the way, showing that they did not need Victor. In the 2018 season, Victor had usual impressive numbers, but the Hornets finished 500 and missed the playoffs. 2019 wouldn't be an amazing season either, as the Hornets finished 6th and were out in the first round once again. Victor would leave in free agency once again and sign with the Timberwolves, and although he'd be teamed up with Melo, they missed the playoff for the next 2 seasons. After the disappointing years, Victor was on the move again. He'd be heading to Indiana, team up with a young guard pair of Luka Doncic and Darius Garland, who just won the ring the season prior. Wemby had a rejuvenation season and won MVP for the 4th time in his career. This team will run through Washington, Toronto, and Atlanta to head back to the NBA Finals. And here were the New Orleans Pelicans in Wemby's way once again. He finally got his revenge on Anthony Davis and became a 3-time NBA champion in the process. After this amazing season, he announced his retirement from the game of basketball. He retired with amazing accolades and had one of the best resumes ever. But what if we took another player and placed him in history? Click here and find out what happens.